There are moments in history when time itself seems to hesitate. Moments when a single heartbeat separates catastrophe from salvation, and somewhere between the dust-choked rooftops of Fallujah and the shimmering heat waves of a dying afternoon, such a moment was forged by a man who never sought glory, only duty. This is the untold story of Sergeant Cole Ramirez, a Marine sniper whose calm was so legendary that new recruits joked he breathed slower than desert sand. He was quiet, disciplined, and frighteningly precise, yet no one outside his platoon ever knew his name, because true skill rarely announces itself. Only arrogance does. And in this story, arrogance had a face. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, commander of the Rooftop extraction detail, was everything Cole was not. Loud, confident to the point of recklessness, obsessed with textbook tactics and the sound of his own orders. He believed precision was something a leader demanded, not something he earned. When the sun rose that morning over Fallujah, Hale stood on the rooftop overlooking the courier route, lecturing the team with the swagger of a general. "We stick to procedure, no improvisation, no heroics. We move when I say move." Cole said nothing. He simply checked his M40A3 rifle, glancing through the scope at the pattern of heat distortion rolling across the ruined streets. His partner, Lance Corporal Devon Shaw, nudged him. "Hale's in one of his moods," Shaw muttered. "When isn't he?" Cole replied quietly. The mission was simple, on paper. Overwatch during the extraction of an informant, cover fire if needed, exfil via armored Humvee. But war does not care for paper. At 1600 hours, as the informant climbed into the extraction vehicle, the world erupted. A buried explosive tore through the street. The Humvee vanished in a tower of flame. Gunfire cracked from 3 directions, and the Marines scrambled onto the nearest rooftop, pulling the informant's body and what equipment they could salvage. Within minutes, they were pinned down. Hale shouted commands that dissolved into panic. Every exit route was covered. A sandstorm began rolling in, turning the horizon into a boiling orange blur. The Marines were low on food, lower on water, and almost out of ammunition. By sundown, only Cole and Shaw remained on the highest rooftop. Shaw was bleeding heavily from a shrapnel wound. Cole had one working eye, the other burned by dust and smoke. And in the distance, engines, an enemy convoy. At the front, a truck loaded with explosives heading straight toward a market filled with civilians. Cole checked his magazine. 1 bullet. Hale's voice crackled across the broken radio, full of fear and disbelief. "Ramirez, you can't take that shot. No one can. We hold position and pray." Cole exhaled slowly. "Praying's fine," he whispered. "But the shot still needs to be taken." The desert held its breath. The convoy moved steadily, heat rising in shimmering, snake-like waves. The truck's engine roared, its metal shell packed with enough explosive force to level half a city block. Cole wiped blood from his eyebrow. His vision blurred. His trigger hand shook from dehydration and pain. He forced himself to inhale, slow, steady, as Marines are trained to breathe when the world is burning. Shaw lay beside him, pale, barely conscious. "You can't make that shot," he whispered. Cole adjusted the scope, his broken arm trembling under the rifle. "Maybe not," he said. "But someone has to try." He leaned the rifle against a piece of fallen concrete, the jagged edge digging deep into the bruised muscle of his shoulder. Every breath stabbed his ribs, every heartbeat felt like a hammer. Distance, nearly 1,300 yards. Wind, chaotic, shifting in violent gusts. Visibility, fractured by heat distortion. Stability, almost non-existent. It was a shot no sniper doctrine supported, a shot no commander would authorize, a shot even world-class shooters would refuse under ideal conditions. But ideal conditions were a luxury Fallujah never offered. Cole steadied his breathing, tuned out the chaos, the screaming of distant fighters, the popping of sporadic rifle fire, the sand whipping against his face. He focused only on the rhythm of the truck's movement, the tiny visual cues in the distortion, the angle of crosswind blowing from the east. He whispered a prayer, not for himself but for the civilians who had no idea death was approaching. Then, using his broken arm as support, he willed the rifle to remain still. A single heartbeat, a single exhale, a single impossible choice. His finger tightened. Crack. The sound was sharp, clean, a single note slicing through the storm. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the truck jerked violently. Its front tire exploded. The driver slumped sideways, struck clean through the skull. Momentum carried the vehicle off course. It veered into a concrete barrier and detonated in the empty street, far from the market. The explosion shook the entire district. Even the insurgents stopped firing. Even Hale fell silent. Cole lowered the rifle. He had fired the shot no one else could. And for the first time all day, the city was quiet. The silence lasted only moments. Then the distant crackle of small arms fire resumed, hesitant at first, then escalating. The enemy had realized the convoy was gone, their greatest weapon neutralized by a single bullet. But the Marines on the ground had realized something else. Sergeant Cole Ramirez had performed the impossible. Hale's voice returned on the radio, frantic, but now tinged with something he had never shown Cole before: fear and respect. "Ramirez, was that you?" Cole didn't answer. He was already dragging Shaw behind a low wall as rounds began snapping overhead. Minutes later, the quick reaction force arrived. 2 battered Humvees that had pushed through the city after detecting the explosion. Marines took positions, laying down suppressive fire as a medic sprinted toward Cole and Shaw. Shaw was lifted onto a stretcher, barely conscious but smiling faintly. "Told you. You'd make that shot." Cole allowed himself the smallest hint of a grin. "I told you to save your oxygen." As the Marines secured the perimeter, Lieutenant Hale climbed onto the rooftop, breathing hard, sweat streaking down his dust-covered face. His helmet was missing, his confidence shattered. He stopped in front of Cole, staring at the man he had quietly dismissed for years. "You directly disobeyed my order." Cole looked up at him, his voice soft, steady, unbroken. "No, sir. I ignored your fear." The rooftop fell silent. Hale's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. What could he say? His strict adherence to procedure would have doomed hundreds. Cole's courage and unconventional mastery had prevented a massacre. Major Ellison, the QRF commander, approached them. He glanced from Hale to Cole. "Who took that shot?" Hale opened his mouth, but Ellison had already turned to Cole. "Sergeant?" Cole shook his head. "It was the rifle," he said. "I just pulled the trigger." The major raised an eyebrow. "The rifle doesn't calculate shifting wind. It doesn't adjust for distortion. It doesn't fire through an arm that's probably broken." Cole said nothing. He didn't need to. Ellison placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You saved a city today. Remember that." As medics began tending to Cole's injuries, the moral of the day's events settled heavily on everyone present. Virtue is humble. Skill is silent. But arrogance is loud and blind. Hale stood there, feeling the weight of his own pride. He realized that leadership without humility is nothing but noise. And for the first time, he addressed Cole not as a subordinate, but as a Marine worthy of respect. "Sergeant Ramirez," he said quietly, "I was wrong. About a lot." Cole met his gaze. "Sir, war isn't about being right. It's about doing what has to be done." The next morning, as the sun rose over Fallujah's scarred skyline, reports spread through the base. Whispers at first, then conversations, then awe. A single bullet? Ramirez did it with one working eye. He fired through a windstorm. No one else on Earth could have made that shot. The Marines in Cole's unit gathered around his cot, offering water, jokes, and respect. Shaw, now stabilized, raised his bandaged hand weakly. "Tell them the truth, Cole. You did it because Hale said you couldn't." Cole chuckled. "No. I did it because those people in the market never got a choice in this war." That became the real lesson of the day. Duty above ego. Skill above arrogance. And the quiet strength of those who choose responsibility over recognition. Years passed. Fallujah became a chapter in history books. Units rotated home, new recruits took their place, and battles faded into the endless river of wartime memory. But one story refused to disappear. At sniper school, instructors began referencing the Fallujah shot, a near-mythical demonstration of precision. They spoke of a Marine who calculated wind that no weather instrument could read, who pierced heat distortion as if it were glass, who refused to let fear dictate his actions. No one ever told it dramatically. No one embellished the details. They didn't have to. The truth was already unbelievable. Lieutenant Hale, years later, became a different man, quieter, more disciplined, more aware of the limits of authority. He often told young officers, "Leadership begins the moment you stop believing you're the smartest person in the room." Shaw recovered fully and went on to train new spotters. His first lesson to every class was simple. If you want to understand what honor looks like, study Ramirez. As for Cole, he rarely spoke of that day. He retired quietly, spent time fishing, and taught marksmanship only to those who asked humbly enough. But every so often a Marine would track him down, someone who had heard the legend and wanted confirmation. "Sergeant, is it true? Did you really take that shot with one bullet left?" Cole would smile faintly. Does it matter? Someone had to protect those people. To him, the event was never about heroism. It was about responsibility, the kind that doesn't come from rank or orders, but from the moral backbone of a soldier who understands the value of every innocent life. One evening, years after the war, a young Marine approached him at a veterans gathering. "Sir," he said, "what was going through your mind when you pulled the trigger?" Cole paused, looking out at the sunset. "I wasn't thinking of the shot," he said. "I was thinking of the people who would never see their families again if I didn't try. Fear makes you hesitate. Duty pushes you forward. And sometimes, all you have is one chance to do the right thing." The Marine nodded, eyes filled with respect. Cole added one final line, a sentence that would later be etched into the training walls at sniper school. "Skill means nothing if courage doesn't pull the trigger." Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories from Histofy.